welcome you all to SAP Online Classroom. As you all know, our session is today's for MSc Physics, and the session is deriving Miller indices and constructing reciprocal lattice. And we have Dr. Libu K. Alexander, a wonderful speaker with us. Dr. Libu K. Alexander is an assistant professor for Department of Physics, University of Calicut. Dr. Libu has done his PhD from IIT Bombay, and he's a postdoctoral fellow at Université Paris, France, Center for Quantum Computer Technology, Australia. His research topic was semiconductor nanomaterials, graphene, magnetism. And he has got a proven track record as a research guide, as 3 students completed PhD so far, 4 other students now working in his guidance. And he has written many articles in reputed journals like Physical Review Letters, Physical Review, etc. Dr. Libu has got a scintillating experience of 9 years in MSc Physics. Recently, one of his proposals for MOOC program on solid state physics was approved by the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India. I proudly give you Dr. Libu K. Alexander, our speaker. Dr. Libu, welcome to SAP Online Classroom.
Thanks, Asif.
Once again, I welcome you all. And Dr. Libu, here you go.
Thank you very much, Asif, for your nice words of introduction. To my dear students and all, it is indeed a matter of pride for all of us to be over here for this 1 hour of session, live session regarding one of the areas of knowledge related to material science and solid state physics. Before getting into the subject, let me appreciate the Government of Kerala, the Higher Education Department, and most importantly, the ASAP team for facilitating this kind of live sessions so that we could reduce the negative impact of the lockdown in the areas of academics. So let me welcome all of the participants to this. Feel free to ask put your queries. I will be ready to help you as far as I can go with that. So as Asif rightly told, the topic of today's discussion is deriving Miller indices and constructing reciprocal lattices. You will know that this topic is very much connected to the materials and the solid state physics. So now coming to the materials, you know that the materials mostly drove the development in the modern age. You take humanity, our journey till now. Even when many times we were being categorized in terms of the material which we used. For example, Stone Age or the Bronze Age, Iron Age, Steel Age, plastic, carbon, whatever it is. So many times it is the material which drove it. So why the materials became so important? Because whenever we conceive some kind of an idea, in order to materialize that, we need to put that idea into a material, right? So people started using various materials. First, it was for using tools. Then it became for machines, and nowadays we need a material for each and everything. And this never ends. There is no end for the discovery of materials. Now the question is that why do we need this many number of materials? Each applications we need different materials, right? So why different materials? Because the qualification of a material, whether to use it for an application or not, is primarily decided by its property. It is its inbuilt property, or how does it behave at a particular environmental situation or the surrounding situation. Different materials are having different properties. So it is the property which makes the material important. Now, the point to think is that from where does all these properties come about, right? Where does these properties originate? One of the quick answers could be that because the materials are made up of different kinds of atoms, each material is made up of a different set of atoms or molecules, and that could really lead to a different material and therefore a different property. Yes, you're partly correct. The different materials are having different kinds of atoms, and therefore by the influence of that atoms, it may be driving to different properties. But let me put forward to one example here. In your screen, you will be seeing two kinds of materials. One is a graphite and another is diamond. As you know, this graphite is a soft material which we normally started using from our school days when we used it as part of our writing pencil. But then we have the diamond, which is considered to be one among the strongest materials, hardest materials we ever had. But what are the kind of atoms in it? Both of them are having absolutely same elements. They are pure carbons. But even after having pure carbon, they show entirely different set of properties, which means that it is not really the atoms alone which decides the property, but instead it is something else, which I have shown here in the right side of the slide, which is that which I have shown the structure, the crystal structures of both the graphite and the diamond. As you can see there, their structures are entirely different. Okay, there may be a difference of their bonding also. So in conclusion, the property is primarily being decided by three factors. One is its elements, the kind of elements which make it. Another is the bonding, and the third factor is the crystal structure. So therefore, I can tell that if you need material and its property, the qualification of the material towards an application is going to be decided by its crystal structure to a great extent. So therefore, the study and the understanding of the crystal structure is very important for the evolution of our development process. The crystallography and the in-depth studies on understanding crystals will continue as long as we need materials for our day-to-day life. So that is the kind of significance the crystal studies are having. So now, within the crystal studies, our topic for today's lecture is one of the important things for the process of understanding a crystal. So therefore, for today's session, I have noted down the learning outcomes for the session as: first of all, we have to understand the concept of Miller indices. Then we will try to derive the Miller indices for a given plane. Third, yellow would be to plot the planes corresponding to given Miller indices. And the last outcome which we will try to do is to construct a reciprocal lattice using the Miller indices planes. So therefore, now let me assume that all of you understand having a initial training in the crystals. But for the purpose of this lecture, let me remind you one of the major concepts which we need here, which is called the crystal lattice or the phase lattice, or lattice as we call it in short. So many times I tell my students the similarity between lattice and an auditorium. As you can see the picture there, an auditorium without any audience, without anybody sitting in it. So what you see there? You see there chairs being arranged in a periodic fashion, but there is nobody sitting in that. There is nobody occupying those seats. So basically, they are vacant spaces, but those vacant spaces are arranged in a periodic manner. Exactly similar in the case of a crystal, you have this kind of an arrangement, primarily a vacant set of regular pattern, which is what we call as simply as the lattice. And each seat there, or the point in the crystal structure, as we call it, is called the lattice point. But when this lattice gets filled up with the individual atoms or a basis of atoms, we get a final crystal. Right? So the term phase lattice or the lattice is just simply devoid of any physical conduct. So please remember that point. With that introduction, I presume that there are two kinds of lattices. One is called one I call as the direct lattice, and another I call as the indirect lattice. So what is this? The direct lattice and the indirect lattice. There cannot be two lattices because we see only one kind of lattice, right? So what I call as the direct lattice is the lattice which one can really see with a naked eye. Provided if our eye was having a capacity to see the lattice, the inside of the lattice, we would have been traveling through the in between the atoms and the molecules, and we would have been seeing that. So that is what is called the direct lattice. But till now, our eyes are not tuned to directly see the lattice. Right? So we need something else to aid us in seeing those lattices. There comes the concept of indirect lattice. So what we do normally? What we do is that we take some kind of an electromagnetic radiation, for example, X-ray. We take this X-ray, we pass this X-ray through the crystal, and we measure the output. So those who know it know that you must have studied about the Bragg's law and all that. It means that this output will be a product of the diffractions which are happening inside the crystal. So depending on the direction in which you are putting your electromagnetic radiation, the output pattern will be also different. So the lattice which the electromagnetic waves see inside is what I call as the indirect lattice. In that context, so in our context for this class, I would say that the reciprocal lattice which we call is actually an indirect lattice. Right? So based on that indirect lattice, we derive the direct lattice. So that is what we do normally. And I need to talk about this one at the later part of this talk. Just for example, I have shown here a face-centered cubic lattice. It's a direct lattice, and in the right side you can see the reciprocal lattice of that, which are entirely different. I will come to the reciprocal lattice a bit later. Now, what is a crystal? A crystal is having a lot of periodic arranged vacant spaces, right? And these vacant spaces together will project some kind of a planes. Like in the auditorium image, which if you remember that, you can have different kind of planes through it. You can draw a line horizontally through the auditorium, or you can draw a vertical line through the seats in the auditorium, or you can draw a diagonal line through the chairs in the. So depending on the observer, we can have different directions in which you see it, and therefore different planes. And all those planes will be parallel to one another depending on the observer. Therefore, likewise in the crystal we have the space lattice, which will have an infinite sets of lattice planes, each having its characteristic interplanar spacing. Here one of the points to note is that out of this, only those which have high density of lattice points which are significant and show a diffraction of X-rays will be taken into consideration for a normal analysis. So the planes which we observe based on the electromagnetic intervention which we make in a crystal is what we know as the Bragg planes. So depending on the resolution of the technique which you use, there can be different set of Bragg planes. Like in a synchrotron radiation, the kind of Bragg planes which you observe may be totally different from a from a traditional X-ray spectrometer. So that differs. In any case, there is this infinite set of lattice planes, each having its characteristic interplanar spacing. So therefore, since there was this thousands of new crystals coming up, we need a better way of analyzing those crystals and studying those crystals. In that context, in the 19th century, one of the crystallographers, William Miller, he evolved a method to designate a set of those parallel Bragg planes in a crystal by 3 integers, H, K, A, L, which we normally put it in the parenthesis, H, K, L, and they are known as the Miller indices. So therefore, the Miller indices basically notate a set of parallel planes in X. And for the future purpose, basically denote, and these family of planes are orthogonal to the shortest reciprocal lattice vector. I'll be telling what is the reciprocal lattice vector mean by in a short while. So these are the two ways in which one can define a Miller index. Now the question is that okay, what is the use of this Miller index, right? This invention of Miller indices actually gave all the scientists around the world a uniform common language to describe the crystal morphology. And when the planes are designated using Miller indices, are arranged in a sequential manner, they themselves will form a 3D lattice. Yeah, as you know, so there is this reciprocal lattice vector which giving the direction to the direct lattice. So then, if you put the each Miller indices together, that will drive together another 3D lattice which we call as the reciprocal lattice. And that reciprocal lattice is very important many times for many kinds of theoretical studies. So that are the uses of the Miller indices. Now we know Miller indices is used to designate parallel planes using 3 integer representation. Now one has to know how are these numbers being evaluated, right? There are 4 simple steps with which one can evaluate a Miller index. First and foremost, you have to find out the intercept of this crystal plane in the ABC. So ABC is the real and direct lattice basis vectors, and one has to know the intercept, which are represented by x, y, z. Usually, x will be a fractional multiple of a, and so on and so forth. And next step is to form a fractional triplet x by a, y by b, z by c. And third step is to inverse the triplet as a by x, b by y, and c by z. And then it is simple that you need some kind of an integer number in the Miller indices, because h, k, and l, as I told earlier, they are pure integer numbers, and therefore we need to multiply it with a common factor, and therefore we will put that also as the fourth. So let me tell you an example. Now if you have a lattice which is x is equal to 2a, y is equal to 1b, z is equal to 1c. So that is the Miller index, that is the intercept of the crystal of the lattice plane in the basis vectors. So what we have to do, we have to form the fractional triplet x by a, y by b, z by c, which I can write it as 2, 1, 1. And then I will inverse that triplet as 1 by 2, 1, 1. And then I will put a common factor to multiply it together and to make an integer as 1, 2, 2. So therefore, I can tell that my HKL value for the given set of plane is 1, 2, 2. So basically, it will look like the one which you can see in the figure there. Right? So that is the one which we have shown there is a 1, 2, 2 plane, which is very much in matching with the with the question with which we started this calculation. Now we know how to evaluate a scale. Now the question is that but many times we get an scale plane, scale indices, and then we have to draw the plane from that. So since this session is dealing with the fundamentals, I have put very simple situation as the initial case, which is 1 0 0 0 1 0, those kind of series. So how do you draw a 1 0 0 plane? So I have shown a model crystal there. Now let's take this atom as our original point, our beginning point, right? So if I need to draw a 1 0 0 plane, which means what? Which means that I have to move 1 unit in the A direction and 0 units in the B and 0 units in the C. 0 units in the B and 0 units in the C. Therefore, I move 1 unit from this central atom to here, and then this, as you know, for this kind of an example, this is all the lattice points becomes equivalence. So therefore, for this also we will move this much, and for this this also we will move one unit to in the A direction, and so on and so forth. So what you finally get is a plane which is in the in this direction, in this plane, as I have shown here in this diagram. So this will be 1 0 0 plane. And similarly, for the 0 1 0 0, for the 0 1 0 0 1 0, I have to move 1 direction in the 1 unit in the B direction. So that is what. So I will move 1 direction in this one. For this lattice point, I will move 1. For this point again, I will move 1. To this point again, I will move 1. Means that I should be getting a plane over here. Right? Like this. And now, similarly for the movement in the other direction, now you know in the 0 0 1 direction also you will move you will start from here. You will move towards the Z direction 1 unit each from all the lattice points. So therefore, you will get a plane like this. So that is how you plot the 1 0 0 0 1 0 and the 0 0 1 plots. Now there's another set of planes which is the bar 1 0 0, 0 bar 1 0 and 0 0 bar 1. So how to plot that? So now earlier case we started with this one, right? Now we know that this is a representative unit cell. So you have another unit cell sitting at the next point somewhere here. You have a unit cell over here, unit cell over here, and in all the directions you should have a unit cell. Then only it becomes a crystal, because it should be a continuous crystal. Otherwise, it is disqualified to be being a crystal. So therefore, if I consider that the neighborhood crystal as this one, where this is my center point, -1 will be here. -1 movement in the A direction or the X direction will be over here, from here to here. And similarly, for all the lattice points, it will make a similar movement. And finally, you get a bar 1 0 0, like the one which we have shown there. And similarly, you can have the 0 1 bar 0 and 0 0 1 bar being plotted. So basically, as you will identify the 001 and 001 bar, unless it is being told, it is really difficult to identify because they are really, many times it becomes similar planes. Now, that was about the lattices in which there were only one movement in only one direction. So now let's take those planes which we have movements in two different directions, which is the 101, 110, 011, etc. So similar to what we did for the examples which we already explained. Again, we start from here. So for example, if you need to plot the 101, which means that I will move one point to the forward, right? And at the same time, I need to move one point to the Z direction, which means that I will get something like this. Right? And similarly, for this lattice point, you will get something like this. So that creates another plane, right, which is a diagonal plane, which I have shown here, 101 plane. And similarly for 110 plane, which means that you need to move one unit in the one unit in the X direction and 1 unit in the Y direction, which means that I will be getting something like this. So now you have another plane, which is again another diagonal plane, similar to the 101. So that is the 110 plane, right? And similar to that, you can have 011 plane and the 101 bar, 1 bar, 0, 011 bar, etc. So, but you will know from the figure there, you will identify one thing, that the 110 and the 1 bar 0 are perpendicular to each other. That's the only difference. So but depending on the direction in which you will be firing your electromagnetic radiations, you will be able to see the lattice planes. So this picture basically shows a basic X-ray diffraction pattern. I was talking about the X-ray will hit and you will get a pattern out of it, and each peak there is being designated by an appropriate HKL value or the Miller index. So that is the beauty of here. That is how we use that. So we know that in the crystal structure, which basically I have taken this slide from this picture from Callister of the books in material science. So basically from there we will know that in my polycrystalline alpha iron, which is a DCC crystal, I have only 3 sets of lattices. There are three peaks, and those peaks are really signature to those set of compounds, and I can easily identify the compound as belonging to DCC structure. And I have shown there the basically it is shown the 110 plane, 200 and the 211 planes, which are present in the DCC lattice. Now, let me quickly go through the characteristics of the Miller indices. So all the parallel equidistant planes will have the same Miller index. Thus, the Miller indices defines a set of parallel planes. Right? So that was really the definition. But one of the characteristics one should always take note here is that the parallel planes does not necessarily make, I mean, condition that the plane should be parallel and it should be equidistant makes a Miller index distinguisher. So there may be parallel set of planes, but they are not equidistant, and therefore those set of parallel planes will have still a different Miller index. I will show the example of it. So that is the parallelness and equidistance are necessary conditions for observing as categorizing it as a plane. And this information is really, the second information is really important when we want to derive the Miller indices. A plane parallel to one of the coordinate axes as an intercept of infinity. And the third feature is, as I have shown here, if the Miller index of the two planes have the same ratio, that is 844, 422 or 211, then those planes will be necessarily parallel to each other. I have shown here the XRD spectrum of the body-centered cubic and the face-centered cubic there. And you can see there that there is the 110 planes, 220 planes, and the 330 planes simultaneously present in the body-centered cubic. So that's a very beautiful question waiting out there regarding that, why that thing comes there in the BCC. But due to paucity of time, I'm not touching that. If there is time, I will touch on that later. Come back and touch on that. So till now, we have discussed about the Miller indices. We have defined Miller indices. We saw how to evaluate Miller indices, how to designate a given plane with appropriate scale indices, and also we summarized on the different fundamental features of Miller indices. For the rest of the session, we will focus on the reciprocal lattice. What we do is that we will basically define the reciprocal lattice and see the construction of the reciprocal lattice. So what is the reciprocal lattice? As I told in the beginning, it's a very beautiful concept. Is the reciprocal. Basically, without the reciprocal lattice, we really don't have an idea of the so-called direct lattice. So it is that important. So the reciprocal lattice is basically a set of imaginary points, right? Constructed in two ways. So in order to make any kind of lattice, construct any kind of lattice, you need two inputs, right? One is the sense of direction in which I should be putting my lines, and second is the magnitude of the lattices, of the lattice vectors. How much should be the length of my lattice, of my sides, right? So that is it. So the two important informations are the direction of a vector from one point to another, which should coincide with the direction of a normal to the real space planes, which is actually being designated by our Miller index. Second point is the separation of those points. That is the absolute value of the reciprocal lattice vector. So the reciprocal lattice will have dimensions which are represented by the reciprocal lattice vector. Similar to our ABC, here also we have some other set of reciprocal lattice vectors, and that separation is equal to the reciprocal of the real interplanar distance, which means that the dimension of my reciprocal lattice vector will be equal to the reciprocal of the real interplanar space. So let me demonstrate that with this kind of a quick example. So in the left side, I am going to plot a real lattice. I have shown a real lattice there. You remember that real lattice need not have anybody. It is a vacant space. So I have put just the chairs over there, right? On the left side, I have the real lattice. In the right side, I am going to make a reciprocal lattice corresponding to that real lattice. So now let's see what are the kinds of planes which are associated. So these green lines over there represents different set of parallel planes, right? So now I have this set of parallel planes. I put my electromagnetic radiation on, and then this wave starts seeing this parallel, equidistant parallel planes. They gets diffracted, and that should generate my reciprocal lattice vector. The green arrow which just generated in the right side over there. So this one basically is corresponding to this set of parallel planes. It's perpendicular, is connected to the distance between interplanar spacing. Now we have another set of parallel planes like this. Corresponding to that, now I can put a new reciprocal lattice vector like this. So I'm in the process of constructing a reciprocal lattice. I have that. Now I have the new point over there. Now again I identify another set of parallel planes, and I put the corresponding lattice vector, and I generate the fourth point over. Similarly, I can have another set of parallel planes. Another set of parallel planes like this, and then I can generate a fifth lattice point. Similarly, if these are the only 4 lines which I could spot, then based on that I have generated in the right side a reciprocal lattice. So that is it. So that is how you generate a real reciprocal lattice from a real lattice. Now, so that is for the demonstration purpose. Now, for rest of this short few minutes left now, for the rest of this presentation, I need to take a change in the axis. This ABC, I need to now put it as A1, A2, A3. So ABC was the reciprocal, was the lattice vectors corresponding to the direct lattice, right? So now I need to put it in the A1, A2, A3. Basically, A1, A2, A3 represents the lattice vectors of primitive lattice vectors. So you know that there are this primitive lattice and the non-primitive lattice. Like our BCC, FCC, they are actually not the primitive lattices, they are non-primitive lattices. And correspondingly, you will have for every non-primitive lattice, you can have a primitive lattice. But the non-primitive lattices may be more easier to understand and grasp the idea. So therefore, we tend to put the non-primitive. But this A1, A2, A3 necessarily represent the lattice vectors corresponding to a primitive lattice. So primitive. So, but for the derivation of a reciprocal lattice vector, it is more easier to have the or more better to have the primitive lattice. So based on this A1, A2, A3, I can generate a crystal based on the direct lattice based on the expression R equal to N1 A1 plus N2 A2 plus N3 A3, where Ni are indices. It can be 1, 2, 3, whatever you feel like, whatever the crystal offers. Now, so you have the A1, A2, A3 being defined for this direct lattice. So for this direct lattice, now you have to make another set of lattice vectors, which we call as the reciprocal lattice vector. As I told you, reciprocal lattice vector has a direction and it has a magnitude, and the magnitude will be reciprocal of the interplanar distance in the direct lattice. So B1, B2, B3. And this B1, B2, B3 similar to the R equal to N1, A1, N1, A1 plus N2, A2 plus N3, A3. Here in this family of planes, which is corresponding to the reciprocal lattice, I can put down reciprocal lattice vector as G equal to HB1 plus KB2 plus LB3. So what is this HK and L? HK and L comes from the Miller indices which we have just derived. So therefore this B1 is defined as 2 pi into A2 cross A3 by magnitude A1 dot A2 cross A3. B2 equal to 2 pi into A3 cross A1 and divided by magnitude A1 dot A2 cross A3 and similarly. So basically, they are all cyclic permutations of the vectors. You must have already identified that. And another characteristic which these vectors, this connection between the reciprocal lattice and the direct lattice vector is bi dot aj is equal to 2 pi delta ij, which is delta ij is the chronicle delta. So I'm not delving into the details of that significance of those kind of parameters. But the point to take over is that in order to construct a reciprocal lattice vector, if you know the direct lattice vectors, you can calculate that, and vice versa. Now, now let's try to construct the reciprocal lattice of a simple cubic lattice. Right. So you have a simple cubic lattice, right? So simple cubic lattice means all the directions are symmetrical. A1 is equal to AX, A2 equal to AY, and A3 equal to AZ. So that is how, because all the directions are symmetrical. And the earlier slide I have shown you the B1, B2, B3. And now if I need to find out the expression for the value of B1, A2 cross A3 will come out to be S squared X. And then I put the dot product with A1. And therefore, I will get, finally, I will get the B1 is equal to 2 pi by A into X. And B2 will be 2 pi by A into Y. And B3 will be 2 pi by A into Z. So what does that mean by? Basically, we were trying to find out the, derive the reciprocal lattice for a simple cubic lattice. So now you have in play with you all the lattice vectors B1, B2, B3. Try to construct it. How will that lattice look like? Again, similar to the case of the simple cubic direct lattice, you are having the same dimensions A. Here also you have the same direction, same dimensions 2 pi by A, 2 pi by A, 2 pi by A, which means that now I can understand that a primitive lattice vector of a simple cubic lattice will give me another simple cubic. So that is how, and similar to that, you can, by using these expressions for B1, B2, B3, you can calculate the reciprocal lattice for the other lattices also. When you are free, you can try to calculate the construct the reciprocal lattice for a BCC lattice. In the screen, I have shown the clue for it, because one need, as I told you, for constructing a reciprocal lattice, it is good to have the primitive lattice vector. So the primitive lattice vectors of a BCC are shown here. A1 equal to half A into X plus Y minus Z, A2 equal to half A into minus X plus Y plus Z, and A3 equal to. So with this one, you can start, and then you calculate the B1, B2, and B3, and then try to analyze what will be the kind of lattice, or how will the lattice look like for a primitive lattice for a BCC, and the reciprocal lattice for a BCC lattice.
So we have only
Yeah, sure. And similarly for the FCC lattice also, you can make such derivation. You can, if you can note down those primitive lattice vectors. That is it. So let me wind up the session. Thanks for this for attendance. And basically, we have tried to calculate tried to derive the Miller indices and understood its significance, plot the Miller indices, the planes based on the Miller indices, and then construct the very basic reciprocal lattice vectors. So based on this knowledge, definitely you can, this set of knowledge is definitely important for further getting into the ideas like the properties of the crystals, like thermal properties, the optical properties and all that. This would give a good introduction to that. So thank you very much for that. And we can have the interaction now.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we are moving on to the question and answer session. We can have the first question, which is like, what is the difference between real lattice and reciprocal lattice?
Yeah. Can you see the screen here? Yeah, exactly. So basically, as you can see there, you have the direct lattice and the reciprocal lattice. So basically, the real lattice is the lattice. That is the only lattice which is really existing. That really exists. Which means that if I would have to see that what contains inside the unit cell of one of the copper crystals in the glass in my hand, that is the kind of lattice I would have been seeing. But the reciprocal lattice is really an imaginary lattice. We don't see that reciprocal lattice. To some extent, I can tell that the electromagnetic radiation which is interacting with the real lattice actually see only that imaginary lattice, so-called the reciprocal lattice. So reciprocal lattice is purely a product of the interaction between the wave and the real lattice. So the real lattice is real, whereas the reciprocal lattice is a purely imaginary concept.
Okay, sir, thank you so much. We have another question. If a liquid is cooled to its solid form, can we use reciprocal lattice technique in it?
If the, sorry, the first word I couldn't hear it.
If a liquid is cooled to its solid form, can we use reciprocal lattice techniques in it?
The problem is that it is not the problem with the reciprocal lattice. It is the problem with the direct lattice. See, for any kind of technique, the kind of parallel planes are really critical here. So if your liquid is like super cooled or cooled, if you have enough amount of parallel planes, definitely you can have a reciprocal lattice. Because see, nobody is preventing you from creating a reciprocal lattice, because that's a purely an imaginary lattice. Because if your wave is able to diffract through a set of parallel planes, enough set of parallel planes, then that electromagnetic radiation will throw out a reciprocal lattice vector and the corresponding plane. So I can see a question here. If it is just an imaginary concept, then what is the significance do we have about reciprocal lattice in a real world? Very good question. See, that is what. As I saw, in an ideal world, you don't need a reciprocal lattice. Why? Because if we were able to see a reciprocal lattice and real lattice, also need. But what we get is that we don't see with our naked eye. What we get is a pattern which is coming out of your machine, right? So therefore, in order to build that pattern, you need to talk in terms of you need to have a talking terms with the wave. So what the wave is throwing up is set of parallel planes only. If I put 1,000 planes in parallel, then my electromagnetic radiation throw out only one single line there, which is perpendicular, one single plane which is perpendicular to all those parallel planes. So that is how you cannot avoid the reciprocal lattice. Basically, you reach the direct lattice through the reciprocal lattice. So therefore, the reciprocal lattice is as important as a direct lattice for a person who intends to study the properties of it.
Okay, sir. One more question.
Sir?
How do you find the lattice constant from Miller indices?
Yeah, so that's a big procedure. I don't have my textbooks with me. So for example, for a simple cubic crystal, you just Google it. There are very simple formulas which connects you with the. So basically, from the HKL you can get the UVC, right? So from so there are simple formulas which connects between the lattice vectors and the HKL.
So there's a question like you have mentioned that synchrotron radiation and X-ray diffraction method will give different information about planes. Could you please elaborate?
Yeah, sure. Basically, it is just a matter. There is something called the real lattice which is really existing, right? So, like this. Imagine that I have person A and the person B. I might be identifying three parallel set of chairs as a periodic arrangement. But a person B may not be agreeing to that. For him, a periodicity means that at least 10 should be parallel. Right? So between us, there is an information difference. For me, it is 3 parallel planes even makes a significance, whereas for the person B, at least 10 has to be there. So that is how we connect to the resolution of any technique, right? So for a normal XRD machine, because of the kind of radiation which you use, many times that the intensity is really low for X-ray radiation because it's an ionizing radiation. Because it's an ionizing radiation, so we don't use that much intense radiation. So therefore, for an XRD, the set of parallel planes has to be bigger or it's bigger number. So therefore, but whereas for a synchrotron radiation, depending on its power, even lesser number of planes can be identified as parallel planes, and therefore a diffracted pattern can be originated. So that is the beauty of the that is why many times in the studies of the polymers and the biological materials, people tend to use the synchrotron because there you need a lesser degree of periodicity than a pure solid crystal for studies with a synchrotron. So synchrotron makes the stuff easier and more better signals, but it is a more sophisticated technique. So therefore, one should always first try with the normal XRD and then only go for it. Yeah, thank you very much for this interaction session. Thank you, Asif and Anjali, Anita, for and the whole team, Asad, for facilitating this one. And for all the students who participated.
It's a paradigm shift for the students. I'm sure it's a paradigm shift for the students, and they must delighted too with your presentation, especially the real-time examples like the open auditorium, the empty auditorium when connected to the lattice and all. You know, very much appreciated, sir. And we continue looking forward to you know, for your sessions.
Thank you.
Relationship, sir. And thank you once again. Thank you all participants. Thank you, sir.